Sure.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Disa, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to the 25th episode of the Leadership Conversations in the Development Sector. The social impact sector is full of passionate leaders with innovative outlooks to the world's greatest problems. Our leadership conversations focus on the unique insights offered by these leaders as they share their experiences and move the development sector forward. Our host, GoBarefoot, is an interactive web portal dedicated to the social sector. It brings together individuals, NPOs, NGOs, and CSR arms of organizations with the mandate of creating a one-stop information website for both networking and knowledge sharing. We are supported by Catalyst, an NGO which has been preparing young women for leadership roles to create equality in opportunities and bridge the gender divide. We're also supported by third sector partners, India's only executive search firm exclusively for the development sector. Our guest today is one of the leading lights in the development sector. I extend a warm welcome to Hisham Mundol, Chief Advisor, India Environmental Defense Fund. EDF's work in India is centered on playing a catalytic role towards a vision for an Indian pathway to shared sustainable prosperity. Hisham started his career in sales, marketing, and consulting with Hindustan Unilever, WorldTel, Accenture, and Infosys. He subsequently moved to the development sector, where he led the National Condoms Programme for the Indian government's National AIDS Control Organization, and later set up operations in South Asia for Wikimedia Foundation, promoting projects like Wikimedia. Most recently, he led the work of Children's Investment Fund Foundation in India across health, nutrition, adolescence, education, girls and women's rights and livelihoods, children protection, and climate change. In conversation with Hisham is Shital Kakkar Mehra, leadership expert and executive presence coach for CEOs. Shital has trained over 75,000 professionals across Asia and has personally coached over 1,000 CXOs in the past 2 decades. She has conducted workshops for diverse organizations across Asia and has been invited as a speaker by leading B schools and professional associations. She's a best-selling author, and her latest best-selling book, Executive Presence, The Poise Formula for Leadership, is India's first research-based formula for this leadership skill. Shital is an active philanthropist and social entrepreneur. Over to you, Shital.
Thank you. Welcome, Hisham. We are very excited to hear your views. And welcome to our episode of Leadership Conversations in the Development Sector.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you sorry, yes.
No, I was just going to say thank you also to Catalyst and GoBarefoot and third sector partners for the work that they've all been doing. Thank you for inviting me. I have a particular debt of gratitude to third sector partners because they were the ones who helped me make a move to the development space. So thank you all around.
Superb. Thank you so much. In fact, my first question is a bit connected to that you have had a very interesting career trajectory. You started off in the corporate sector and then you transitioned to the development sector. Now you tell us it's courtesy third sector partners. And you have been in leadership roles in varied NGOs across various causes like health, nutrition, education, livelihood, child protection, and now, of course, climate action. How have you as a leader been able to adapt to the various organizations given the evolving landscape of the sector, even in India today?
Sure, no, thanks for that. I think my starting reference point is actually I've been ridiculously privileged to work in a set of remarkable organizations and work with some incredibly fabulous people on issues that I care a lot about. So that always helps in terms of the adaptability. There is the question of different organizations, but there's also the question of different sectors. And I think what I've found useful is just being able to learn and listen and absorb as much as you can, as soon as you can. Every organization has a particular frequency of how it works. There's cultures, there's ways of working, and there's things that an organization is really good at, and every sector standalone can be incredibly complicated. So by no stretch do I pretend to be a master of any of those sectors. But I think over a period of time, just the ability to understand what are the key strategic issues within a sector, and then organizing your thinking and your approach to address those issues. Again, this is one of those things which you're constantly improving on, but that helps. And in general, being a little adaptable is a good thing.
Wonderful. I agree with you. The ability to listen, and as leadership becomes more and more collaborative, and learn, unlearn, relearn, all of that becomes a very critical thing. So yes, wonderful. Thank you so much. The way you have defined it, it works both for corporate as well as for the development sector. Now, you took several career risks. So what is the biggest risk that you took in your career? And what was your biggest learning from this risk?
Interestingly enough, it wasn't from the corporate world to the development sector, because that would logically have been one. I was working with Hindustan Unilever in sales and marketing. I had done an MBA, and my business school happened to be across the road from the Lever's building. And the only thing in life I ever wanted was to get a job at Hindustan Unilever. I remember when I got that job, was I think probably the only time in my life when I sat down and said, I have achieved everything that I could possibly ever want to achieve. My point is, I was really happy to be in HLL. I had a meeting, I'd gone for a business meeting with a gentleman called Mark Mascarenhas, who was in the cricket sports management business. And I remember the meeting was supposed to start, somehow it started much later. But I left the hotel room at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and 9 o'clock the next day, I put in my papers to go join him, because I was inspired by the vision that he had. I saw areas where I thought I could contribute, and it just seemed so exciting. The lessons that I've learned from that, it helps when you make these dramatic life changes when you're much younger, and you don't really have a risk calculator permanently
much less at stake.
Yeah, exactly. But in general, follow your heart. At the end of the day, how much you do at work and the hours that you spend at work requires a level of performance. It requires a level of resilience sometimes, and the mathematical calculation has to be that you need 99% inspiration and 1% perspiration. And if you have that inspiration in terms of this is what I really want to do, this is what I really like to do, this is a cause I'm really interested in, that helps a huge amount. The second is to and different folks are wired differently, but the way I look at it for myself is just keep nudging yourself outside of a comfort zone. The moment you're in a comfort zone, things become a little settled, and maybe you're not stretching yourself as much as you might want to, or you're not learning new things, or more importantly, you might not be getting new experiences. So keep that comfort zone as not the outer fence, but the stepping stone where you dip your toes in a little further.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vet. What an interesting example. And my third question to you is that the sector has also changed. Now, since you transitioned, it has significantly changed, evolved in the last couple of decades. How should leadership evolve or should have evolved to rise up to this challenge?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think I see two or three things that have happened in the sector which has a bearing and needs to continue to have a bearing. I think the first is typically you look at the sector as a set of silos. There's a health portfolio and an education portfolio and a climate change portfolio, etc. And you tend to think of issues from a health angle and education and agriculture angle, etc. It is absolutely critical to think about it in the broader context of any sector. Science is essential, economics is essential, strong program design is essential, but unless you're able to think about the political economy and the broader ecosystem that you operate in, it is you'll always be suboptimal. The example that I give is when you're in a field visit, absolutely regardless of anything that you're doing, try and visit a government primary school during the time of the midday meal. That will tell you so much about overall governance, about how benefits are being delivered to citizens, and it'll have a bearing in whatever sector that you happen to be in that field for on that day. That's one. The second is, and this is mostly from an NGO and aid organizations perspective, there used to be a time, and there are still issues out there where a lot of the thinking and the directives have come from the head offices, wherever they are in Europe or America. Slowly, and some organizations do it better than others, they've realized that you need locally thought through, locally customized solutions run by folks on the ground. Now, one of the responsibilities that puts on the local team is you have to come up with that thinking and you have to come up with those strategic insights. So not listening blindly to a set of directives in that sense from international organizations, but developing and crafting out an Indian plan is critical to that, and that's something where you need to build skills. I think another change that has happened is, and this isn't just in this sector, but there is an energy and vibrancy that you get from diverse workplaces and teams. Every time you meet a young new recruit and you think about what you were and the kind of challenge and question that they ask you, it just sharpens you and keeps you on your toes. So those are the kinds of things that I see having changed. And you can't no longer say, I have the formula and everyone shall follow, because statistically speaking, you're unlikely to have the right formula.
That's so true that there's no one size fit all approach. You have to be holistic, you have to be macro, you even have to be micro in finding solutions. Yeah. So yes, tough times for leaders, but very interesting, challenging times for them as well. Now, technology has been a game changer in many areas, including the development sector. In your view, how, technology should or possibly could play a game changer in this sector?
Sure. I don't mean to be pedantic about it, but if you just for a moment define what technology would be, it is anything that helps you do something smarter, faster, cheaper, better than what you were doing earlier. If you take that frame of reference and then start looking at different sectors and how technology could play a role, and learn from the private sector or from government programming or anyone else that you want to take out there. An Anganwadi worker or an agriculture extension worker or an ASHA are doing a number of things over, often, not often, they are entirely overburdened in terms of what they need to do. They have cumbersome processes in many cases, and physically there is a lot of difficulty in the work that they need to do. How do you maintain scale and quality? So think about if I was running, for the sake of argument, a political campaign. I wouldn't have the same messaging across a city or across a state. Block by block, what parties do is they'll identify demographics and they customize messaging. Imagine if we were able to equip extension workers of various kinds with that kind of technology, where the infrastructure is now available in terms of the mobile phone and the back end analytics part of it. I think that would allow you to deliver a lot more quality than you might have right now. Digital education is another example. There is a format where the teacher says something and you say 1, 2, or 3, it delivers that lecture, but adaptive learning is so easy to do in that sense on a digital platform. So scale and quality is one aspect of it. The second, and I want to touch on the analytics piece, it is terrifying to know how much Facebook and Amazon know about what I think, what I do, where I am, how I am, etc. The back end in terms of machine learning and analytics and data science is there. The foundational building blocks are there, but they are not being adequately used by the development sector, because you have a theory of change, and that theory of change suggests you do 1, 2, or 3 things consistently without adaptation at an individual by individual level. The third kind of technology is breakthrough scientific leapfrogs. Green hydrogen holds enormous strategic potential for the world and in India, obviously. The question is, right now, it costs about $3 to $6 for a kilo. It needs to come down to $1 for a kilo. Where is that R&D going to come from? Are we going to rely on external R&D to develop this technology, or are we going to make a concerted effort? Batteries. There is critical minerals that go into batteries, and there is a supply chain constraint around it. We should never be in a position where we replace, dependency on fossil fuels from certain countries with dependency on critical minerals from other countries. But for that, what we need to be doing is developing a lot more of R&D in-house. And
investment in the sector.
Absolutely. Investments by the government, private sector, and the stepping up of Indian research and academia.
So true you say that, because during the pandemic was possibly the only time that we saw the corporate world, the development sector, and the government work together, whether it was for vaccinations or mask awareness or any of that. So clearly this partnership can work. And hopefully it should work. So yes, I agree with you regarding technology. Hopefully we will steer in the right direction, and soon enough, and in a cost-effective way. Now, you as a leader have proactively worked towards developing potential leaders in your team while you were heading up various organizations. So can you share with our listeners a couple of tips or tricks or techniques that you have used to develop leaders? Because, talent, of course, is also crucial for this sector.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like an arithmetic geek because this is my second formula for the session, but I'm not an arithmetic geek. One of the things to look at in any team and the ways of working is to say, at what level is somebody doing a particular job? Are you doing it at the level that you're designated and you ought to be doing it? Or are you, for various reasons, ending up operating at an N-2 level? Maybe there is inefficiency in the organization. Maybe there is a culture of micromanagement, whatever the root cause might be. How do you get, potential leaders to move from N-2 to N+1? And the N+1 is almost always, it is challenging. It is moving a little above their current capability set. It is moving a little above their past experience and maybe even their comfort zones. But how do you find that balance to just nudge people a little forward is one thing that I think I have been well served by my managers in the past, and I hope I'm doing that as well. The second is invest in a second line. There are so many awesome NGOs in India and across the world where you have this, larger than life founder, and they cast a shadow and nothing grows under that shadow. As there is no shortage of work, there is no shortage of opportunity, and there is a dearth of talent and capability. So try and build that second layer out concertedly. And the third is the power of mentorship. Being there as for somebody to ask a question about what they want, bounce off ideas. I think mentorship is just so critical to answer your question, but more generally in life.
That's true. The role of a leader is again changed, and we are looking at them as mentors, coaches, influencers, more than just leaders who are leading. But there's so much more to their role. Yeah, thank you. This is a very, very interesting answer. And of course, mistakes, learnings, and failures are a part of any founder's or entrepreneurial journey. So is it okay to make a mistake in this sector? And how do you bounce back? Is the environment conducive to fail in the sector? Please share your views on that.
So it is not just okay to make a mistake. It is not okay if you've never made a mistake, because when a mistake happens, it means you're trying to do something different. What that means is that there is there is innovation at play and there's entrepreneurship at play. Innovation and entrepreneurship will never have 100% success rate. So I look at where we've stumbled on a project or a piece of work, and you should actually celebrate it. Some of the most interesting readings of websites are the sections where they talk, hey, these are a few things that we did wrong, and this is what we learned from it. And it tells you also, because you can also make out when it's been written by the programs people or the marketing and comms people. When it's written by the programs people,
authenticity.
There is a degree of authenticity, and it also reflects a degree of humility of the organization, so that's an important part of it. The bouncing back bit is it is for you to first of all acknowledge that something hasn't quite worked the way you'd want it to. Try and understand what might be the causes. There will almost always be a large number of external factors that have contributed to it. And you've got to consider the external factors and figure out what you might have done differently, if at all you could do something. But don't let the external factors kind of blind you to where you could do things differently going forward. Is the atmosphere right? No, it's not for the most part. And it is not because both from the funding and the actual implementing side, implementers more often than not want to say that what we are doing is, we're the greatest NGO ever and we've, changed the world. And that doesn't therefore then leave you the space to say, hey, I made a few mistakes along the way. And similarly with funders. So unfortunately, that's not. I think we have a way to go before the environment is conducive enough. But if you come back to the starting point of saying you need innovation and you need entrepreneurship, then you would actually celebrate where things haven't delivered exactly the way you planned them out, or mistakes that you went along with. Because oftentimes, if you do that, you then, don't repeat.
Yeah, the environment conducive to people failing, learning, trying, experimenting. That's a wonderful way to look at it. Super.
And just one additional point is, if people shared more about where things didn't work out, we could have innovation in mistakes. Let's all be making different mistakes from what others have done, because we're all making a lot of the same mistakes. And that's a little boring.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Even our academic system is not very generous to failures and mistakes. So yes, it is a part of our culture. Now, interestingly, you have interacted a lot with decision makers. So what advice do you have for strategic decision makers who shape the mission and the direction of the organization, especially an NGO?
In my mind, I think one of the biggest risks of an NGO is not that a program didn't deliver results, or you had a funding gap, or there was a regulatory issue, etc. I think the biggest risk is the risk of irrelevance, where you're not able to create enough real sustained impact. And what that requires is, it requires you to have a very clear strategic focus and have, and organize a set of capabilities that will help you deliver on that focus. Why do I say this? Sometimes in the development space, it is, you look at an issue and there are multiple dimensions with which you can try and address that problem. You open your eyes and there are multiple problems out there. As a human being, it is sometimes difficult to say, hey, I care about this issue more than I care about that issue. So let me try and do both. And then a third issue comes along, and then you end up trying to do many things without achieving adequate depth on each one of them. And it's never a popular exercise in terms of saying, hey, of all the things we can do, these are just the one things that we're going to do, but we're going to do it to the best of our abilities, and that improves the odds of us being able to deliver the impact that we seek. So that's one part of it. The second part is, sometimes we look at geographic spread as an advantage. Geographic spread is a good thing in some cases. When you're running, a mass market consumer business, yes, you want geographic spread. But when you're running an NGO and you're thinking about the levers of change, it is almost always better to focus down geographically as well, so that you're able to build a network of partnerships and understanding of how things work, and inspire a set of ambassadors who could then take forward the work that you're doing with their peers, because that's a much better, in my view, a much better pathway to influence than attempting to take it personally yourself across. And the third is just have that openness to question the work that you're doing, the work that you have done. It doesn't in any way take away from the value of that work, but unless we're able to look at, what could we have done differently, and if any of us had, the magic recipe to solve these problems, they would have been solved a long time ago. There's a reason why they haven't been solved, because it is that they're hard.
Yeah. They're tough to find solutions. Oh, you put that so wonderfully, and I agree with you 100%. We've run out of time, but not run out of questions. So my final question to you is your one piece of advice to the rising stars in the social sector. From the feedback that we have received, our audience is from Americas, from Europe, from parts of Asia, young professionals, students, crossover candidates, and of course, people from NGOs and NPOs. So yes, Hisham, your one piece of advice to the rising stars of this sector. How they should manage their career.
Don't make fun of the older people in your office, and don't make it sound like they're uncool because they don't know your acronyms. No, I'm kidding. On a more serious note, I think read and listen. And this is all in the spirit of upskilling yourself. Constantly keep looking at something new that you learned or something that you could read from somewhere. The one thing is to just stay hungry. Just stay hungry, accept nothing as the status quo forever, internally to yourself, externally. Sorry, I kind of did it's not a one thing, it's a 1A, 1B, 1C, I get that, but I thought I'd slip those in.
Composite answer. Okay. Superb. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions from our audience. So could we have the spotlight on Aisha, please? She has a question to ask Hisham.
Hi, Hisham.
Hi.
Yeah, my question to you is, how do you inculcate climate change awareness from the very young age?
In an odd way, climate change awareness amongst younger folks is a lot more than it is amongst older folks in general. But you see a lot more of social awareness and a sense of being a citizen amongst younger people than maybe you see it amongst older folks. But I think starting with the basics around don't throw up a piece of plastic on the road, that's one aspect of it. The second is, one of the concerns that is there in a growing economy is, if we follow the model of the West in terms of rampant consumption, we are unnecessarily constraining the efforts that we are making around, energy efficiency, etc. And so just inculcating that spirit of, and I'm not saying go back to the villages and sit under a tree with an abacus and, 2 stones, but just that sense of moderation. I think those 2 would be useful. And you'd be amazed how much science young kids can learn about at really young ages. So, give them access to as much science as they want to, that they care to read about, because it triggers stuff in their heads.
Thank you, Hisham. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. One final question from Anjali Patil of Third Sector Partners. Could we have the spotlight on her as well?
Hi, Hisham. So
Hi,
nice to hear all your views. In fact, your last answer did make me go ROFL.
There you go again. I know that one.
Great. So, jokes apart, I wanted to, understand from you, since you're currently working in the entire climate action space. What do you think, how are climate change issues likely to affect an organization's business operations, their value creation, or anything that they have to do with the organization in the foreseeable future?
Sure. So if you think of, for a moment, forget climate change and just think sustainability as a broader framing. There are 2 ways that you could look at sustainability. You could have sustainability run in, some obscure department of a company because you need to write some stuff in your annual report, or there's some, noisy, pesky shareholder who keeps asking some 3 questions in every AGM. Or you could flip it around and look at what is going on in the world and the significant sustained shareholder value creation opportunity that early movers are beginning to see. Sector after sector. Bill Gates wrote the book about climate change, and he speaks about the green premium, right? Where the challenge is, how do you bring down the cost of a lot of these breakthrough technologies, and that's very much a real issue. But there is a lot of opportunity. There's a green bonus that Indian industry can pick up through innovation, energy efficiency, going greener, and just look around you. When Mukesh Ambani bets the company almost on green energy, He's doing it because he sees that that is where there is a much longer term pathway to shareholder value than maybe the existing portfolio that he might have had. So think about it as a necessary lever for survival and competitiveness. Survival in some cases, competitiveness in most cases. And oftentimes it is about global competitiveness, not even about Indian competitiveness. The Indian steel companies that are today investing in greener steel are going to be, competitive 5-10 years, not just in India, but across the world. So to look at it from a positive spin, don't look at it from a, oh my God, I need to report something or somebody's going to ask me a question, so I need to burnish my green credentials. And the last piece is invest in R&D. I can't tell you how large the gap is in terms of our investments in R&D, and there is a sovereign security risk if we do not have the technologies of the future.
Great.
Yes.
Thanks so much for that.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. With this, we come to the end of our session, and a big thank you to Hisham for sharing his views and his time and with our audience. And a very big thank you to our audience. We really appreciate you being here, and we'll be back in the next few weeks with the next episode. So on that note, thank you, goodbye, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.